welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. And I love to.
Under the blinding glow of the Golden Globe stage, Amy Poehler stands poised, calm, confident, a spark of mischief in her eyes. The crowd laughs before she even finishes her line. But behind every joke, behind every roar of laughter, there's a story of grit, heartbreak, and an unshakable belief that humor can change the world. Before she became a comedy icon, she was just a small-town girl from Massachusetts, too loud for her classroom, too ambitious for her own comfort, and too determined to ever fit neatly into the boxes Hollywood built for women. What does it take for a woman to make millions laugh and still be taken seriously? This is not just the story of a comedian. It's the story of a woman who turned her pain into punchlines, her failures into fire, and her laughter into a weapon of empowerment. This is the untold journey of Amy Poehler, from small-town dreamer to the fearless voice that redefined comedy itself. Before the spotlight ever found her, Amy Poehler was just a kid from Burlington, Massachusetts, a lively suburb outside Boston, where sarcasm was practically a second language. Born in 1971 to Eileen and William Poehler, both schoolteachers, Amy grew up in a house that valued curiosity and laughter more than luxury. Her mother taught English. Her father taught social studies. But together they taught Amy how to look at the world with sharp eyes and a quick wit. The Poehler home was full of energy. Debates at the dinner table, music from the radio, and Amy constantly performing little sketches in the living room. Her parents didn't try to tame her wild imagination. They fueled it. They took her to school plays, encouraged her creative chaos, and never told her that being funny was something for boys. At Burlington High School, Amy was a cheerleader, a theater kid, and a relentless overachiever. She had that rare mix of discipline and chaos, the kind of drive that made teachers roll their eyes but secretly admire her spark. Those early years shaped her comedic soul. The sharp humor of Boston, the working-class resilience of her parents, and the sense that life was something to be observed, mocked, and celebrated. All of it became part of her DNA. When she left for Boston College to study media and communications, she carried more than just textbooks. She carried that unshakable belief that laughter wasn't a distraction. It was a form of truth. And for Amy Poehler, that truth would soon become her weapon, her armor, and her art. After college, Amy Poehler packed her humor, her Boston accent, and her fearless energy into a small suitcase, and drove straight to Chicago, the city where comedy legends were born. The 1990s improv scene there was raw, experimental, and wildly competitive. On those dimly lit stages of Second City and Improv Olympic, Amy learned the art of risk, how to fail big, laugh louder, and keep standing. It was in those cramped theaters that she met another rising star, Tina Fey. Two sharp women in a man's world, bonded by the same rhythm of quick wit and quiet rebellion. They performed in smoky basements for small crowds, often earning little more than beer money and bruised egos. But their chemistry was undeniable, the start of one of comedy's most powerful partnerships. When Amy co-founded the Upright Citizens Brigade, UCB, her life changed forever. What began as a scrappy improv troupe with friends turned into a creative revolution. Their absurd, fearless humor caught the eye of Comedy Central, which gave them a TV show in 1998. It wasn't glamorous, but it was the first break. Amy's name was suddenly known among comedians, her voice distinct, her timing razor-sharp. There were still nights when she questioned herself, when the applause faded and the rent loomed. But those years taught her the one truth that would define her career. Comedy doesn't come from perfection. It comes from persistence. By the end of the decade, Amy Poehler had become more than just another improv comic. She was a storm in motion, unpredictable, unstoppable, and finally ready for the stage that would change everything. Saturday Night Live. In the fall of 2001, as America reeled from tragedy, Saturday Night Live needed something rare, a spark of laughter that didn't feel hollow. And then came Amy Poehler. From her very first sketch, she was electric. Wild-eyed, fearless, and unapologetically weird. Amy didn't just deliver jokes, she owned the stage. Within months, she went from featured player to cast powerhouse, one of the fastest rises in SNL history. She became known for her sharp parodies, from hyperactive teens to political titans. Her portrayal of Hillary Clinton during the 2008 election was legendary, witty, biting, and eerily on point. But her greatest moment came beside her best friend Tina Fey, as they co-anchored Weekend Update, making history as the first all-female team to ever lead the segment. Together, they shattered expectations. Their rhythm was like jazz, quick, clever, fearless. They mocked the powerful, comforted the anxious, and made the audience feel like laughter was an act of resilience. Week after week, Amy became more than a comedian. She became a cultural force. Outside the studio, she brought that same fire to film, stealing scenes in Mean Girls as the overly peppy, cool mom, skating through chaos in Blades of Glory, and starring opposite Faye in Baby Mama. She had become Hollywood's new symbol of smart comedy. Magnetic, modern, and deeply human. But behind the applause, there was fatigue. The weight of fame, motherhood, and constant performance. Amy had built her career on joy, but joy required energy. And in the quiet between shows, she began to feel something else creeping in. A stillness that scared her. She had reached the top. But as every comedian eventually learns, even the brightest lights can cast the darkest shadows. By 2008, Amy Poehler had everything that looked like success: fame, fortune, family, and the respect of her peers. Yet behind the bright lights, her life was quietly coming apart. After 7 groundbreaking years, she walked away from Saturday Night Live. The decision wasn't easy. She was pregnant with her first child and emotionally drained from years of non-stop performance. The laughter that once fueled her began to feel like noise she couldn't escape. At the same time, her marriage to actor Will Arnett, once seen as one of Hollywood's most charming unions, started to crumble. When the news of their separation broke, the media turned it into a headline circus. Tabloids questioned her choices. Could a woman be funny, famous, and a good mother at once? Amy stayed silent. She poured her exhaustion into motherhood, retreating from the spotlight just as her generation of comedians rose higher. Her friends described her as tired but unbroken, still cracking jokes even when she barely had the strength to smile. There were no public meltdowns, no dramatic scandals, just the quiet heartbreak of a woman trying to hold her life together while the world watched. In her own words, she later admitted, "When you spend your life trying to make others laugh, you forget how to comfort yourself." It was a moment of reckoning. The applause had faded. The spotlight had shifted. And Amy Poehler, the woman who had built her identity on joy, found herself standing in its absence, searching for a new kind of strength. But out of that silence, something extraordinary was about to emerge. Not another sketch, not another joke, but a story of reinvention that would redefine her life and career forever. When most people would have stepped back to recover, Amy Poehler did the opposite. She built something new. In 2009, she took a risk on a small, uncertain NBC show called Parks and Recreation. The network didn't expect much. Early reviews were lukewarm, critics compared it unfavorably to The Office, and many assumed it would vanish after 1 season. But Amy believed in it. And more importantly, in the heart of her character, Leslie Knope. Leslie wasn't glamorous or detached. She was awkward, optimistic, relentless, a mirror of Amy herself. Through Knope, Amy poured all the lessons of her life: her work ethic, her empathy, and her belief that kindness could be a form of rebellion. And slowly, the world began to notice. By the 2nd season, Parks and Recreation had transformed from an underdog into a cultural phenomenon. Viewers found comfort and inspiration in Leslie's relentless hope. For women especially, it was revolutionary. A female character defined not by romance or cynicism, but by passion, purpose, and positivity. Awards followed: a Golden Globe, multiple Emmy nominations, and, more importantly, a sense of peace. Amy was no longer performing for approval. She was creating from authenticity. Off-screen, she expanded her reach. She wrote Yes, Please, a brutally honest and funny memoir about ambition and imperfection. She directed, produced, and launched projects that amplified women's voices, and she co-founded Smart Girls, an organization teaching young women that intelligence and compassion are powerful forms of beauty. Her comeback wasn't about reclaiming fame. It was about reclaiming herself. Poehler had reinvented not just her career, but her definition of success. What once was a search for laughter had become something deeper, a mission to prove that joy, in the right hands, could be revolutionary. By the time Parks and Recreation ended in 2015, Amy Poehler had become far more than a comedian. She was a cultural architect. Her laughter had built bridges for others to cross. Generations of young performers, Kate McKinnon, Maya Rudolph, Aubrey Plaza, Ilana Glazer, Abby Jacobson, all point to her as a guiding light. She wasn't just a star to them, she was proof that women could lead, create, and command respect in a world that had long sidelined their voices. Through Smart Girls, she reminded teenage girls that you can change the world by being yourself. Through her production company, she championed female directors and writers who once had no seat at the table. And through her hosting gigs at the Golden Globes with Tina Fey, she redefined what female humor looked like on a global stage. Sharp, kind, and fearless all at once. Her influence extends beyond television. She became a symbol of emotional intelligence and leadership, using humor not to dominate, but to connect. Her characters didn't mock ambition. They celebrated it. Her comedy didn't divide. It united. Today, Amy Poehler's legacy lives not just in awards or quotes, but in every woman who dares to be funny and powerful, emotional and unapologetic. Because Amy didn't just make the world laugh, she gave laughter a conscience. As Amy Poehler moved into her 40s, something inside her shifted. The drive that once pushed her toward every stage and spotlight now drew her inward, toward meaning, balance, and peace. In interviews, she often laughs when asked about having it all. She says, "You can have it all, just not all at once." It's a wisdom carved from years of chaos, fame, motherhood, heartbreak, success. She learned that each demands its own time, and that joy doesn't come from applause, but from authenticity. Her book, Yes, Please, wasn't just a memoir. It was a manifesto for imperfection. Between the jokes and anecdotes, she wrote about anxiety, single parenting, exhaustion, and gratitude. She stripped away the glossy image and replaced it with something more powerful: honesty. Offstage, Amy became deliberate about her happiness. She spends time with her 2 sons, producing stories she believes in, mentoring young comedians, and surrounding herself with people who make her laugh without the cameras rolling. In a world obsessed with reinvention, she found beauty in stillness. "Great people do things before they're ready," she once said. And now, she finally seemed ready to live by her own advice, quietly, joyfully, without needing to prove anything. For Amy Poehler, reflection isn't about looking back with regret. It's about understanding that every failure, every heartbreak, every punchline was part of something sacred. The process of becoming. In the end, Amy Poehler's story isn't just about comedy, it's about courage. The courage to stand on stage when no one believes in you. The courage to start over when the world moves on. And the courage to keep laughing, even when life isn't funny. From the living rooms of Massachusetts to the brightest lights of Hollywood, Amy turned laughter into language, a way to speak truth without shouting, to heal without pretending, to connect without fear. She proved that joy isn't weakness. It's resistance, it's survival. Her journey reminds us that humor is not a mask, it's a mirror. It reflects the pain, the beauty, and the messy humanity we all share. And through every sketch, every role, every word, she taught us that laughter can be a force for change. Amy Poehler didn't just redefine what it means to be a comedian. She redefined what it means to be strong. So when the applause fades and the stage goes dark, her voice still echoes, warm, fearless, and full of light. You can't control the applause, but you can always control the story. If her story moved you, share her laughter. And remember, joy when shared becomes power.